Welcome to another extra episode of Arena Talks in the Star Trek series. Today we will talk about Miles O'Brien and how he has been an underrated as a Star Trek character. And I do that with Ronnie Beaton. Well guys, I'd like to introduce you to Ronnie. Hello Ronnie.
Hello, good afternoon. Hello, podcast listeners. Hello.
Welcome, I think you enjoy joining me for this episode.
You're very welcome. Not a problem at all. I'm happy to help.
Great. Well, we're going to talk about Miles O'Brien. Miles,
Yeah.
of course, I do think Miles O'Brien is an underrated character in Star Trek.
Yes, very much so, I would say. One of the odd things that strikes me about Starfleet and Star Trek is it's very officer heavy, if you see what I mean. In the present day United States Navy, the ratio of enlisted men and non-commissioned officers to officers is something like 4 or 5 enlisted men to every officer. Whereas in Star Trek, there's only something like 20-something named characters who are enlisted men, including Chief O'Brien. Going right way back to the very first, with the pilot episode, we had Chief Petty Officer Garrison on the USS Enterprise. Going to Next Generation, we had Worf's adopted father, Sergei Radchenko. He mentioned being a Chief Petty Officer. And a little wrinkle I only found out about earlier is Janice Rand was mentioned in the script for Star Trek 4 as a Chief Petty Officer, which is quite interesting because she eventually became Commander and Executive Officer on the Excelsior. And that's very interesting because showing off my sort of my knowledge of trivia here. So I've had a lot of I've read a lot about military history. I sort of keep an eye on what's happening with the US Navy. The technical term for someone who has come up through the ranks and been commissioned as an officer is a Mustang. I don't know why, it just is. So, Chief O'Brien is interesting. As I say, he's one of the few named NCOs we have. He's very much a family man. You know, we've seen his progression as a character. He was a sort of an unnamed character on the battle bridge of the Enterprise in Encounter at Farpoint. Then he became a transporter chief. Oddly, he was a lieutenant then, apparently. They hadn't quite fleshed out the character and decided who he was going to be. Then he sort of demoted him apparently to Chief Petty Officer, and he became Chief of Operations in DS9. As over the course of the series, we saw him get married, leave the Enterprise, have children. He's got his new areas of responsibilities, making new friends. You know, so I'd say he comes very fleshed out. More so, he's an ordinary guy, blue collar, as the Americans would say. You know, just an ordinary working guy.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that people like also about the character. It's just an ordinary guy. And I remember he was saying in an interview that he didn't want to have those tight uniforms because he was a working man. And I love that about him. And yeah, he got quite some interesting relationships, for example, with of course his wife and his child Molly, but also like what's his name? I forgot his name.
Dr. Bashir.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yes, that's another interesting thing. I mean, people out with the UK might not be familiar with these kind of. It took me a little while to figure out what the friendship between Bashir and O'Brien reminded me of. And there's a comic, a British comic from the 1950s called it The Eagle. And the star of the comic was this character called Dan Dare, Pilots of the Future. And this is made in the 1950s, set in the sort of distant future then of the 1990s, and we had Colonel Dan Dare of the Interplanet Space Patrol, the chief test pilot, this young idealistic officer in search of adventure, and he's partnered with this older, worldly-wise NCO sort of spaceman class 1 Albert Digby. I think, yeah, that's Bashir O'Brien. So you have the young officer and the older NCO who just wants nothing more than to do his job and go home at the end of the day to his wife and children. He's just an ordinary guy.
Oh, there's of course a period when Kiko O'Brien went to another job and she would left DS9, and that was the period of time that he became closer to Bashir, and that started when that's the point also that they started on going on holodecks with the
the strange obsession was refighting old wars and old military campaigns, the Battle of Thermopylae, the Alamo, and the Battle of Britain, to name just three. So it seems a bit strange, but well, who knows? People have strange hobbies,
Yeah, and
who are we to judge? We are Star Trek fans. We are science fiction fans. Who are we to judge about people with strange hobbies? I mean,
well, I think it was in that way it was very nice because it still was a little bit of military related. And,
yes. Even though we keep the Star Trek keeps telling us Starfleet is not military, it's more. I don't know, like the U.S. Coast Guard combined with, I don't know, an oceanographic organization, sort of primarily for exploration, but they do have weapons primarily for defense. But yeah, it's just, again, it's odd. I mean, I don't think Gene Roddenberry really intended for Star Trek to last this long. We are coming up for 60 years almost in a few years' time, 60th anniversary, and it's gone on and on and on. And for something that was made up as they went along, it hangs together remarkably well. One or two minor inconsistencies, but you sort of, ignore them and sort of try and sort of come up with your own solutions. There's a again, going back to the Second World War, you may not have heard of it. There were 5 brothers, the Sullivan brothers, who all enlisted at the same time, joined the U.S. Navy. There was a major propaganda coup. They were all serving on the same ship, and this ship was sunk, and they all died. So this is what the film Saving Private Ryan was loosely based on. So ever since then, sort of the navies and the militaries, they've been very cautious about siblings serving in the same command. So then we had, if we go for a tangent, talking briefly about Voyager, we had the Delaney sisters. I thought, yeah, that's a bit odd. Voyager gets lost in they get the Delta Quadrant. They says, there's some sort of Federation spokesperson sort of contacts the person. Yeah, so by the way, Voyager's been lost with all hands. We think they're in the Gamma Quadrant, the Delta Quadrant rather. Yeah, we'll sure they'll be back in 7 years. I'm sure your daughters will be fine. They'll be back in 6 or 7 years or so. It was just one of those odd things. But
so
as I say, Starfleet isn't the military. We are told.
Yeah, indeed. So we see a very young and different Miles O'Brien in TNG, but he grew older in Deep Space Nine. What do you think about how the writers have written him in those 2 series?
Well, this is the thing I encountered at Farpoint is this unnamed character on the battle bridge. And sort of the writers and the behind the scenes. They just must have just liked the look of Colin Meaney. But okay, he's a kind of, he has a kind of, he's not traditionally handsome, shall we say. His face looks lived in. He's seen a lot. He's older than the rest of the bridge crew, with the exception of the captain. And he's not an academy graduate. He's come up through the ranks. He's enlisted. So it's difficult because they made it up as they went along. There are inconsistencies. He started off as an ensign on the bridge, I think, and then he was a lieutenant. And transported him and said, "Oh, we're going to need a junior or an NCO," so they made him a chief petty officer. But again, going off on a slight tangent, that's one of the reasons I like the cast. He is an enlisted man. My late father was a chief petty officer in the British Merchant Navy during the Second World War, so I've always had a little bit of a soft spot for the little guy, you know?
Yeah, indeed. So what do you think about the relationship between Kiko and Miles?
Well, they're obviously very much in love with each other. They're saying love is blind, you know, they love each other. They have 2 children together. So, yeah, as I say, Miles just wants to get on with his work, go home at the end of the day, see his wife and children, have a meal, put the kids to bed, maybe read them a story, and not get involved in any crazy schemes with that strange Dr. Bashir, you know.
Is there anything what you really like about him?
Well, he's just an ordinary guy. He could be a father. He could be an uncle. You know, the older guy. He's been around the block once or twice. Again, turning to the real world. In the US Navy, there's a tradition of the older NCOs sort of taking of a junior officer under the wing to sort of, you know, kind of give him a bit of seasoning, as they call it, just to kind of help him out and help him find himself, you know. So I think partly that's what he's done with Julian, and also what else has done with Nog. I mean, first Ferengi in Starfleet is, I don't recall the exact episode, but when Nog first gets his Starfleet Academy uniform tailor and says, "Oh, one happy little Ferengi," and O'Brien just kind of casually mentions to someone, when he graduates, I'll have to call him sir. So yeah, just sort of those things, you know, which again also confirms that O'Brien is an NCO, he's a non-commissioned officer. They call him the Chief of Operations, but that's his title. That's what his position. Your rank and your position could be 2 different things. A smaller ship, a small ship, for example, a Coast Guard cutter could be commanded by a lieutenant, but he would still be called the captain because he's captain of the ship. He's captain of a vessel underway. But yeah, see, I don't know. I don't know what else I can tell you. It seemed like once a season on Deep Space Nine, there would be the let's torture O'Brien. They'll do something horrible to him. I don't know, the episode where he sort of has to live out a life sentence, jail sentence in his mind. And he's suffering post-traumatic stress disorder afterwards, even though it wasn't real. It was real to him in his mind. You know?
Yeah.
Time's Orphan, was it, where little Molly falls through your temporal anomaly sort of thing and comes back as a feral teenager.
Yeah.
And Miles and the kids will have to deal with that. Where's our little girl gone? They have to deal with that. Yeah. I don't know why the writers decided they had it in for Brian. Maybe just because he was an easy target. He was, you can't do anything with the officers to see your bridge crew, blah blah blah. I don't know. I don't know who decides what in the writers' room is a mystery to me. You know? You sometimes don't know. Okay, who decided to do that? Who decided to do that? Whose idea is that? The rating of an episode is very collaborative, from what I understand. Maybe have, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 credited writers, but they'll have the rest of what they call the writers' room sort of pitching ideas. Whether those ideas make the screen or not is another matter. But who knows?
Do you
I used to think that. No, after you, ladies first.
Do you think that the writers could write better things or different things for Miles O'Brien, or do you think they did a good job with him transferring over to DS9 and go further with his story there?
Well, the transfer to DS9 helped because that made O'Brien one of the series regulars rather than a recurring guest star that he was on Next Generation. I don't recall the I think it was a Star Trek you mentioned many years ago in Glasgow, and one of the guests that you may have heard of, Richard Arnold. He was Gene Roddenberry's assistant in the latter years, and after Gene's death, he sort of, a long and terrible story, found himself fired from Paramount, basically. So he made a living as a research consultant, and he would go to various conventions around the world, and something, what was it he said? I've forgotten what I was going to say there. Oh yeah, I remember now. If an actor's name is in the opening credits of a show, then that means they are the principal cast, and they will get paid for the episode whether they are in it or not. So he mentioned, Richard Arnold mentioned specifically, he mentioned Sir Rock Lofton, Jake Sisko, who was in his early teens at the time, just a young actor, and he had his name in the opening titles, and that means, okay, that's good for his career. He's got a credit and a major network show, so that's helpful, So he's part of the main cast.
If you look back to the Miles O'Brien in TNG and the Miles O'Brien in Deep Space Nine, do you think there is a big difference between them and how the writers have written him?
Well, yes, because as I say, in TNG, he was O'Brien, and Colin Meaney was a recurring guest star. So you had 7 or 8 principal cast members: Patrick Stewart, John Frakes, etc. Then you had the guest stars. So the episode you had to have a little bit of business for each of the principal cast. Then the guest stars would sort of come later. But again, it transfers to Deep Space Nine. He is now a principal cast member. He has more to do as an actor rather than just standing around at the transporter console all day and hoping that someone will want beam down to a planet. So he's now chief of operations. He is in effect the chief engineer of Deep Space Nine. He has to sort of hold this ramshackle space station that's falling apart. He has to stop that from flying apart at the seams, and He needs help. He needs all the help he can get. You know, he's well, not to put the fight, but he's a miracle worker. Because for the 7 years of BS9, he has managed to hold this station together. Which, you know, it's a Cardassian station. It's not a Starfleet facility that he was trained on. So he's learning as he goes. Okay, how does this work? How does that work? You know, and early on they have a lot of trouble. They trigger the booby traps in an early DS9 episode. They have to deal with that. It's unfamiliar technology to him. I would imagine that most of the spacefaring civilizations in the Star Trek universe, the way they operate their ships and the station would be fairly similar, but there would be differences. Quite even different brands of car are different. I remember many years ago when I wasn't even a teenager, I was like 11 or 12 or so. My father had a car where the handbrake was a sort of this large sort of handle in the middle of the dashboard rather than the sort of lever at the driver's side. Where the handbrake would be on our usual car was for the controls for the hydraulic suspension. So my dad had to sort of get to grips with that, and then we got a new car after that. For a couple of months, he was still sort of trying to find the handbrake in the middle of the dashboard as in the previous car. But, you know, computers, you know, you call different operating systems. Linux works different from Chrome, works differently from everything. Everything works different. Android is different from iOS. Things are different. Everything's different, you know?
Yeah. What I do also love about O'Brien is that he's just get on with it instead of having those techno bubbles or whatever.
Exactly, yes.
He's just doing it. And I remember when he took on Rom as a technician, I was so happy because we only know Ferengis as like this money alien that only wants to have money or whatever, and Nog and Rom bringing a beautiful change in that, and
showing growth in the characters and showing that not every Ferengi is obsessed with making a profit. You know, they are people, just like us. They may have big ears and strange teeth, but they are people. They're just people.
Yeah, and I think Miles O'Brien is that kind of character that they showed, like, okay, I don't want to say everybody's friend, but I mean, like, he is open to give people chances and teach them, because I think he would be a great teacher. And we also see in the end of Deep Space Nine is that he's gonna get a teacher position on Starfleet Academy. What was really nice to see. I think, but also like you said, he's going on with the work and he's learning while he's doing it. And I think his knowledge, he is one of the knowledgeable people around Starfleet that really knows how to do things and get things going. And exactly with Deep Space Nine, that is just what he really did. It was all him that kept the station going.
Yes, Yes, exactly, yes.
Would you, if I could say, if there would be maybe in one of the new Star Trek series or a Star Trek series that is still going to be written, do you think there is a role for him to come back to, for example, a starship?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's rumors of a Starfleet Academy series, and there have been rumors of a Starfleet Academy series for many years. That was one of the original pitches for Star Trek, the animated series, way back in the 70s, that the command crew of the Enterprise would have been mentoring a group of young cadets. But yeah, it's but it's difficult to put into words. But I feel an Academy series would be it would be difficult to get right, because if you don't want it to be, I don't know, like a kind of a high school series that just happens to take place at Starfleet Academy. You have to sort of. I had the idea that Starfleet Academy is generally accepted to be a 4-year course. So I had the idea that you maybe follow one class throughout the 4 years. Maybe some of them will drop out. Maybe some of them will resign. Others will continue. They'll have their what's called a cadet cruise, which they sort of go out on a working starship and they get mentored by the crew. They grow as cadets, and eventually after the end of the 4 years, whoever's left, your popular cadets, they receive their commission as an ensign. So possibly you could work Miles O'Brien into that. He's now what was his professor of engineering, or whatever they gave him the title. So he could maybe do that. And you could maybe speculate, okay, depending on where in the timeline this could be, maybe one or other or both of his children are cadets and stuff. Because this is the thing. What happened to Molly O'Brien? What happened to her little brother Kiriyoshi after they moved back to her? Would the children follow their father in the Starfleet, or would they sort of go the civilian route like their mother, become botanist or whatever? Because you would have it'd be interesting comedy potential for Molly to graduate as an ensign, and her father having to call her sir. As with Nog, yeah. But I don't know. I mean, there's that many rumours flying out. There's still supposed to be a Section 31 series. They work on multiple projects, and not all of them come to fruition. Things get cancelled all the time before they even see the light of day. For example, going for talking about another franchise, the Batgirl film, which was filmed last year. That's now been shelved, which is a bit of a pity. It was shot in Glasgow. I saw some of the I was kind of in the area. I didn't see the filming. I saw this sort of some of the shops that were kind of dressed to be sort of shops in Gotham City. I saw a couple of the police cars, but a friend of mine in the Glasgow cosplay community, his little daughter, she kind of visited the set in sort of full Batgirl costume. She had a photograph in a paper, and she was interviewed by the sort of news media. And the directors, the two directors, they invited her onto the set, and she met the star Leslie Grace, and I said, photograph her. So and this child's heartbroken. The film has now been cancelled, so I don't know. I mean, what would the future of Star Trek be? I mean, we've gone to from, I think, we had DS9 and Voyager running pretty much simultaneously. And Voyager running pretty much simultaneously, and then we had Star Trek Enterprise, and sort of a few fallow years, and now we've got Star Trek Discovery. We have Strange New Worlds. We have Lower Decks. We have Prodigy. Star Trek Picard, which is about to enter its third and final season, I believe. So that's five different Star Trek series running more or less at the same time. So who knows what the future will bring?
Would you like to see him back? And do you think they could have written his own series?
I don't know. Yes, I would like to see O'Brien back. I'm a big fan of Colin Meaney's work. I would love to meet the man. I don't think he does conventions, though. I know there's a few of the cast aren't really kind of that sort of way inclined. But an O'Brien series, I don't know.
Well, it would be maybe.
What would he do though? Just I don't know, sort of. Maybe I don't. Maybe he could sort of take over the role that Boothby had, the sort of the wise old man, sort of the cadets kind of come to him for advice, sort of thing. I think you could put him in the Starfleet Academy series.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, he would do good because, of course, the ending we know that he's gonna be a teacher on Starfleet Academy. So, why not being an advisor as well? Who knows what's gonna happen?
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah, the future is wide open. Yeah.
I must say, he really got a lot of adventures in his whole career with. As you see with the Dominion War.
Dominion, even prior to his service in the Enterprise, he did a lot of things happened to him. Yeah, so I don't know. It's odd that there hasn't been an O'Brien novel or a comic. Perhaps the writers don't feel it's interesting enough. That's a mistake. I mean, if Grudge the cat from Discovery can get their own comic, why not Chief O'Brien?
Yeah. So this is a call for all the fan fiction writers out there. We like to see a story about or a novel about Miles O'Brien.
Yes.
We love to.
I used to write fan fiction many years ago. As the real life gets in the way, but. Just a little while ago, the little brain cell started firing away and sort of ideas, sort of thinking, I mean,
yeah, maybe you can work that idea out for him being on Starfleet Academy.
The bones of the idea I had was Scotty visiting Deep Space Nine, because after the end of Relic, Scotty just disappears and the shuttlecraft loaned him to who knows where. So who's to say he didn't visit Deep Space Nine at one point? So it's because I just have this sort of mental image of it. Yes, I'm with O'Brien. They're both engineers, and Miles sort of says, "Well, why did you come back with me and meet my wife and my kids, and you can have dinner with us?" So
that would be a nice conversation.
So this would be things. Scotty comes in, and of course, Molly would be utterly enchanted with this strange man. You'd probably think he was Santa Claus or something. but then sort of, we'll have a nice meal with the Keiko and the kids, and it's time to put Molly to bed because she's at school in the morning or whatever. And she persuades Scotty to tell her a bedtime story. And I was like, okay, what kind of story would he tell her? He tells her a true story. Do you know what a tribble is? So he tells her the story of Trouble with Tribbles, suitably edited for younger ears, sort of thing. So there's a little bit of business there, and he meets a war. Really, he sort of. Another thing, I had this idea of Scotty and Quarks getting more and more drunk, and he ends up arm wrestling with Morn. But I had those little, the very, very end of the story would be Scotty's just about to leave DS8 in his shuttlecraft, and he's saying farewell to the crew, and Captain Sisko shakes his hand and says, "It's been a pleasure meeting you. Hopefully we'll see you again at some point in the future." To which Scotty replies enigmatically, "Maybe, or maybe in the past," sort of alluding to Trials and Tribulations, which at the point this story takes place hasn't happened yet. So a little Easter egg, as they say. So, I mean, I'm very much an ideas man, you know.
I do think when Scotty and Miles O'Brien will meet and they are talking about engineering stuff, I think they are really. It's gonna be a conversation really between two old men who has the experiences of it.
Yes, exactly. Yes, because I couldn't tell you offhand how old Colin Meaney is. He is a gentleman of mature years. He's not. O'Brien, as I say, he's not. O'Brien isn't sort of, well, he's not an academy graduate, but he's not fresh out of the training scheme or whatever it is for enlisted men. There's endless possibilities in the Star Trek universe. Maybe there'll be a series focusing on a colony, and there's a little kind of starship that kind of only visits them once or twice a month to see how they're doing, or I don't know. Who knows? That's for other people to decide. Who knows?
What I always found was a little bit strange was when we started in TNG and he had actually no name nor no rank. It wasn't
That's
really.
true, yes.
It was not really a good, clear function what he was doing on, and it reminds me a little bit of Uhura in TOS.
Yes.
When she started, she had also different kind of color of uniforms on, and
Yes.
thank God they did that in Strange New Worlds, that they explained that story a little bit more. And well, that was exactly with Cole Maney as well, and as Miles O'Brien.
As I said, partly that's the writing. I mean, you have your principal cast, and like you've got maybe a brief outline of what their character, who their character is, and what they do. You've got the captain, you have the first officer, you have Councillor Troy, etc. But who's this guy? Who's that guy? You know, it's difficult because once the series gets going, the writers can tailor things to an actor's strengths and weaknesses. I believe initially for Next Generation, Captain Picard would have stayed on the ship for the most part and left landing party duties to Commander Riker. But as the series progressed, you have Patrick Stewart, this fine Shakespearean trained actor, that marvelous voice of his. He says, "Okay, we'll give the captain more to do." That's sort of nice thing. There's again going back to the days of the Star Trek conventions I went to. There's a story. Well, when I think it was the second season of Next Generation, when there was in the middle of the late 1980s Hollywood writers' strike. Star Trek wasn't really much affected by this because they had a sufficient backlog of scripts. They did recycle one script from the proposed Star Trek Phase 2 series from the late 1970s, The Child. And the story goes that kind of Jonathan Frakes read the script and he kind of had issues with it. He kind of went up to the director and said, "Yeah, this was written for the old guys, wasn't it?" Meaning Kirk and Spock. He says, "Well, yes." I said, "How can you tell?" "Well, there's nothing for me to do." You know, so which is true because at that point in time when these scripts were written, there was not really a concept of the first officer being a separate character. Spock was science officer and first officer. See what I mean? So it's the writing. You know, they see what works, what doesn't work. Cast members kind of like they maybe choose to leave. They say, okay, I don't feel my character is progressing. I would like to leave the show, or in some cases they are fired. It's difficult. As I said at the very start, they are making this up as they go along. I mean, for as long as there has been Star Trek, the fans have been arguing about what is canon and what is canon. Anything you see on screen, as far as I'm concerned, that's canon. The arrangement has always been the stuff you see on the screen, that's official. Books, comics, video games, role-playing games, etc., etc. They can do whatever they like within reason, but if at in a future date the TV series contradicts that, then the TV series is right. That's always been the way things have been.
Is there anything of the character Miles O'Brien you would like to see change?
No, honestly, he's fine as he is. I would like to see Colomini return to the series at some point. Perhaps lending his voice to the character to O'Brien in an episode of Lower Decks, or I don't know. Honestly, who knows what the future will bring?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, I am out of questions. So, is there anything you'd like to add?
Now you're asking me questions. No, I'm fine. If you know where I am, you know how to contact me if you need a guest for a future podcast on another topic regarding Star Trek. I'll be happy to help.
Well, maybe there is one more question. What is your favorite episode with Miles O'Brien?
Oh dear. That's a very good question. Now what was it? The one where he accidentally gets sent the 20 minutes in the future or something like that. He accidentally can create a temporal echo or some other such piece of technobabble. Or his future self travels back in time a certain amount of a day or such. I can't remember the title of the episode, but it's right at the very, very end of the episode. They're in Quark's, and Quark's going to talk to him. What was it like? I don't know. It's just one of those things. And Ryan kind of goes to leave and says, "Oh, by the way, Quark, Quark dabble, just as dabble wheel kind of pays out a winner." So that's that. It's just little comedy bits. The Quarks, you know. As I say, O'Brien's just one of the guys.
Yeah, I think he always will be, and like I said before, he is not someone of engineer who would have that techno bubble like LaForge would have.
Yes, He would try and, for want of a better expression, try and dumb it down to make it understandable.
Yeah.
To a non-engineer.
And I think that
my own job. I explained it's not my own job is not complicated, but there's a lot of technical aspects to it. So I explain it to people as broadly and simply as I can. And even then, I kind of leave bits out because I'm not really supposed to talk about that. I know that sounds rather mysterious, but that's this day and age of secrecy and non-disclosure agreements sort of thing. We've got to play it safe.
Yeah, it's Miles O'Brien is always. I think he was always one of my, let I say, favorite characters. But he was like I said, underrated, and he did a lot more back in the scenes than that he would go and say, okay, I'm the leader and we need to do this and that. And I think a lot of people nowadays can identify him with himself because he's just a common man.
Mm-hmm.
And I
That's
think
it, exactly, yes.
I think that is why people also like him and can understand him.
Mm-hmm.
But
He's just an ordinary guy who happens to be the chief engineer or chief of operations on this old Cardassian mining station that's been turned into a starbase. Loves his wife, loves his children. His best friend is the station's medical officer. He just, as I say earlier, he just wants to get on with his job, go home to his family, relax. Maybe have a beer in Quarks and play a game of darts with his friend.
well, one thing I always like about it, though, when he went with Bashir darting, and Bashir could never win from Miles, and that was very, in my eyes, a little bit strange because Bashir was one who was genetic manipulated.
Yeah. Well, again, that's the writing. I mean, that was just something that was suggested. And the writers, maybe a little wrinkle for Bashir, and this is midway through the series. I don't believe that was a part of the original character outline for Dr. Bashir. But on the other hand, I suppose you could justify it by saying, okay, Julian is this genetically modified super genius, and he's hiding it because of the enormous amount of prejudice against, the as I say, the genetic modification in humans in the Federation. It's, as we say, it's illegal, but they kind of, as I say, they kind of justify it and sort of sweep it under the carpet because, he's held. They're in the middle of a war, and they can't really do anything about it. And his father takes the blame, so they kind of like, okay, we'll let it slide. But it's inconsistent. As I say, as I said earlier, they make it up as they go along.
Well, Ronnie, thank you very much for this lovely conversation.
You're very welcome. I'm happy to help.
It was nice to hear your opinion about Miles O'Brien, and I hope to talk to you soon.
And you. I'll always hope to speak to you in the future.
Dear listeners, thank you for listening, and join me next time for a new extra episode in the Star Trek series of Horrenda Talks. You can listen and subscribe to Horrenda Talks on the YouTube channel or join the Facebook group. If you'd like to comment or talk with me about this episode, you can reach out on the Facebook group and the YouTube channel. I also like to tell you about my two other podcasts called Girls Talking Trek and Horrenda's book club, Smooth Jazz, Tea and Books. Girls Talking Trek. Together with my lovely co-host Amanda Hopper, we recap every 2 weeks an episode of Star Trek TNG. All the episodes will be recapping chronically following. We will approach each episode with humor and a feminine look. Girls Talking Trek is also to listen, follow and subscribe on Anchor, Google Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, or on all the other podcast providers. You also have a Facebook group and a YouTube channel. Every 10th episode will be a live streaming, so you can talk live with us about the episode. Horrenda Talks Books Club, Smooth Jazz, Tea and Books is a podcast that will discuss books of all genres. You can discuss with me on the YouTube channel and the Facebook group. There will be books reading events with live discussions. Of course, you can also give me a recommendation what I can read. My perfect picture while reading a book is in front of a fireplace, loads of tea, and smooth jazz in the background. So join me, read with me, and discuss with me the books we are reading. I will see you next time.